again, everyone, and welcome to today's tutorial, which is an extension of yesterday's tutorial, which was on how to start practicing a new piece hands separately. Today, we're going to look at how to practice hands together. So before you start practicing hands together, you want to review hands separately. You want to do this for pieces that you just started and for a few weeks, because it's always good to go over the notes, fingerings, articulation, and the rhythm of each hand separately, making sure everything is intact before you try to put hands together. It's like having a system of checks and balances to really make sure your accuracy is as high as possible, hands separately before you go into hands together. What happens is that if you have issues playing hands separately, they're going to be magnified when you put hands together. So that's why you always want to keep it very clean and perfect. Like, you can literally get hands separately perfect going into playing hands together. Okay? I'm going to play the last line, which is what we did yesterday, and I have not touched the last line. So I'm going to take my time, just take a look at the key signature again, take a look at some fingerings I've done, and get comfortable before I start playing hands separately. Okay? I'm not even going to use the metronome yet. I just want to be comfortable with the notes, get reacquainted with the fingerings and the rhythm and the articulations. Okay? Faster. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... At this point, I'm going to find out my tempo, and before I try to do hands together, I'm going to set a goal to reach hands separately at a certain tempo. Now, what that tempo is varies from piece to piece, but I like to go for between at least 80, so 80 to 100. Okay, now that said, I have had some students try hands together when their hands separate is at 60, but what ends up happening is that hands together is roughly 40 to 50% of the tempo that's hands separate. So that means they're going to be playing at 30, which is very slow. So there's no hard and fast rule for this, but I like to aim for 80 hands separate before I do hands together. So I'm going to find out what tempo I just played that. And 2 E and 3, 4. Okay. So that's 44. So 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a attempt, I'll give myself about 90% confidence level. So I'm going to go up by 10%. 10% of 44 is about, 4. So I'm going to go up by 5. Okay? 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a I'm not going to show you the entire process, but I'm going to try the left hand now, which is very simple, as you can see. And I'm just going to try it anyway, because I want to demonstrate this process, but in your pieces, even if the left hand is quite simple, you should still review it anyway. Make sure you do your counting, and don't let anything skip through the cracks. You should also practice at the similar tempo that you did the right hand, even if it's very much similar, because you don't want the tempo between your hands to be like a very mismatched, because then you might be tempted to play one hand more quickly than the other, or you might play the whole thing hands together too fast. Okay, so you want to be careful about playing one hand much faster than the other hand. So one e, four e and a, one e and a, two e and a, three e and a, four e and a, one e and a, two e and a, three e and a, four e and a two. Okay, now this is where we put hands together. And when you put hands together, you have to be even more careful about what you're doing. And again, let's think about one of the guidelines I gave you yesterday, which was you can let go of the rhythm if you make sure that you're playing the notes, the fingerings, and the articulations correctly. So you're going to see me pause. You probably will see me pause because I want to be careful about playing those three elements correctly. So let's see how it goes. I'm going to tap the metronome at about half the tempo. So I'm actually just going to toggle 25. So I'm going to hear how that sounds. 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and So, some of you might think that was very slow, and I'm sure that he could have played it faster. True, but I wanted to be very careful about what I was doing because my concern was getting the right fingerings, the right notes, articulation, and also the rhythm. So many times I see students, they practice very fast, they try to do hands together at the same tempo they just did hands separate, and it's a recipe for disaster. Just to experiment and prove this point, I'm going to put my hands separate tempo, which was 50, 1 E and a 2, and let's see how successful I am, alright? Okay, let's even put the metronome on. 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Okay? Now, if I'm being completely honest, I had two fingerings I changed, and also some of my notes were clunky in the double notes. So while I was able to do at that tempo, I was surely not 90% confident. I was about 80% confident. And an explanation that might be the reason why I could play it pretty well, hands together, at the same tempo I just did it hands separately, is because my true hand separate tempo might have been 80, 90, or 100, right? And if you cut 100 by 2, so let's say you do hands separately at 100, then you can have a good estimation that hands together will be around 40 to 50. So I think my true tempo for hands together is about 40. So I'm going to go ahead and try that. And I'll probably feel a lot better at it. Okay? 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a E and a 4 E and a. Now at this point, if you play the whole line correctly, then you can increase the tempo by around 10%. But what happens if you didn't play it correctly? Well, you would practice drills exactly where you made the mistake. And if you didn't make a mistake, but you didn't feel very confident, in other words, you felt like you could have hesitated or you lost your confidence at a certain section, then you can practice exactly from that section without the metronome. So I actually felt that the part between measure 20 and 21, where it goes look at my hand, there's this awkward fingering 5-3-2, which is necessary to slur the notes. I'm going to practice that in the right hand 5 times just to make sure to be comfortable about it. And I'm going to do the hands together, but I'm going to do it much slower, okay? Remember, whenever you go from hands separate to hands together, you have to be conscious to lower your tempo, okay? Now I'll try from beat 3 of measure 20 to 21, okay? This is another great time for an explanation where when you start in the middle of a measure, don't just start right away. Make sure that you're in the right position, that your fingers are on any flats or sharp notes, and that you have a good idea of what the rhythm is, okay? A lot of the time I see students, they start and they do what's called a stutter, which is, oh no, that wasn't right. Oh, just give me a second, I'll get it, right? And what you just did was that you just trained yourself to practice with mistakes. So instead of doing that stuttering, take your time to get ready in the right place, in the right position, and then start, okay? So I always demonstrate this to my students. When I start a drill, I just take some time, get oriented, make sure I have the right fingering, and then I'll start. A little bit of patience goes a long way, okay? Didn't feel very confident about that. I'll do it again. Okay, so now that I got it once, I'm going to make sure I do it 4 more times at 90%. But I won't show you the whole process today. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how I take a piece hands together. That's not the only way to do it, but that's a way that I've been showing my students. That's a way that I follow myself. And something I forgot to mention is that you should track the last tempo that you reached for that section into your tracker so that you can have an idea of what the progress you want to make the very next practice. Okay? Hopefully this helps, and I wish you all the best with your practicing. Take care.